Texas World Speedway in College Station, Texas. Hello, everybody. I'm Ralph Shaheen, and joining me is Elliott Forbes Robinson. That's Andy Pilgrim on the outside and driver Joe Vardy on the inside. They're starting on the pole here today at Texas World.
It's everybody's strategy to try and get on the pole. We've been very fortunate this year to get however many we've got this year. You just try your best. Joe likes to start, and he prefers to get out of the car and let me finish, and it's fine. You know, it works pretty well.
The weather here at Texas World Speedway is a little warm if you're a driver, 93 degrees, 60% humidity. That is real tricky inside the cockpit, and a real tricky racetrack here as well, Elliott Forbes Robinson.
Well, it is. You come down to turn one, which is a decreasing radius corner where you can run 3 abreast really coming down the hill, but you have to single file by the time you get to the tight infield. Run through a tight infield, and then you come back out on a long banking racetrack again.
Here's a look at the Grand Sport Class points. The GS cars are the biggest, baddest ones of the bunch that you'll find in IMSA Street Stock Endurance Championship. And as you can see, Andy Pilgrim leading the points over his teammate Joe Vardy. There are 4 different divisions lined up in our field. Here's a look at the field as we get set for this one on the pole. Joe Vardy and his teammate Andy Pilgrim, 98.583 miles per hour to earn that pole. As you take a look through the rest of the field here, remember Texas World Speedway is a super speedway. We will utilize both portions of the super speedway itself and the infield road course. So this is a car that has to handle well for the infield road course, and it has to have a lot of top end speed when you're up on the front straightaway, especially here, which even has a little banking to it.
It has some banking to it, and the infield is very difficult in actual fact to pass. It with the combinations of corners they got, it makes you follow single file, even if you're the faster car, because the fact is it's one line through these sections.
And of course, playing into all of that, as you see how we get into some of the other classes, that you're going to have to really keep your eyes open, because one of the biggest problems here, I would think today, is going to be closing speeds, especially going down into turn number 1. Some of the bigger GS cars are really going to be flying as they come hauling down those straightaways. For example, the Pontiac Firebirds, like our pole winner, and they're going to come up on the back end of a little Honda. They're going to have to watch the brakes.
Oh, there will be a big difference in speed, Ralph. And the other thing is, it's a 6-hour race. They're going to have to pace themselves a little bit. These cars are very reliable, but the thing is that it's still 6 hours in this heat. They're going to have to run and be careful through traffic.
You can see all the rows of cars, 26 rows, 51 cars entered in today's event. That's a lot of cars, even on a big speedway like Texas World here in College Station, Texas. And we're set to go with IMSA Street Stock Racing here on Prime.
See, the Pontiac got a little bit of a jump, but the Mazda is still sticking right there. And I think that Mazda could be a factor. Boy, he got a big jump on brakes there over Joe Vardy. That'd be Peter Farrell. And Peter's starting this race because he's taken off for Laguna Seca as soon as this is over.
That's right. He's got another IMSA supercar race when he gets over there. Look at them, even down into the, almost into the infield section below the white line.
Into the pit lane exit coming off of there, and you can see where there's 3 and 4 abreast almost coming off of there. And Peter's holding the lead. Joe Vardy's sitting right behind him, and that is a tough section coming off and making a transition from the banking down into the flat.
That's really going to put the stress and the strain on the suspensions of the cars, because it really upsets the balance of that car as you try to get through that transition over there. You can see the driver's already kicking up the dirt. In that infield section, there is not a lot of curbing. At a lot of racetracks, you'll see the walls are real close, so there's a lot of curbing to keep you from doing that. But here at Texas World, you can dip a wheel pretty easily.
Oh, yes. When you do, it's going to throw some dust up and possibly get it on the track for the person behind you. The apexes do have the berm to go into, but the outside have nothing. You'll just run off in the dirt.
Here's a good look at a pass up in the front section of the racetrack. That's Doug Goad. And another one of the Pontiac Firebirds, one of the Formula Firebirds, gets around Stu Hayner as we watch the battle there for 3rd position.
And right behind them, it looks like Boris Said, who should be a factor. They've got that Mustang running much better now, and it should be very good.
Just a nice, beautiful use of the drafter. He got right up behind him, the foot flat on the floor in that Firebird. And here comes Boris now, trying to get the Mustang up in front of the Pontiac.
Boy, Boris took a really good shot at him right there. But that tightens up so much going into that corner. It's very hard to get in there 2 abreast. You have to wait and get in behind the other car. But it looks like he's going to take another shot at him here at any time. see how tight this section is back here and how that you have to go single file. It looks right at this moment Boris is faster, but can't do anything about it because it is a single file racetrack.
Bo Lemler in the other Mazda RX7 running back behind them. That would be, I guess, 6th position behind Boris Said. Boris going to try and see the horsepower of the Mustang, something it's not very well known for, and it's going to pay off for him here.
Yeah, it looks like he's working really well today. The move is good. He looks like he's going to try and get to the front. I haven't seen Boris in many of these races so far, but he's doing a heck of a job today.
Across the start and finish line, and they'll start another lap. Well, we're just beginning to get things underway here with IMSA Street Stock Championship Racing on Prime. Stay with us, a lot more to come. Over the last 30 years than anyone else, genuine Chevrolet. Joe Vardy is currently running in 2nd place in that black Firebird, sitting right there in front of that white Mustang of Boris Said. And Ralph Shaheen and Elliott Forbes Robinson are joining you here today as we watch up front Peter Farrell in that red Mazda RX7 that just went out of frame.
It's amazing how fast Boris has been able to work his way to the front here. And there he goes by Joe Vardy. Makes it look easy. Like Joe just let him by this time. Didn't want to race with him.
The great thing about this particular division, the GS class, as we take a look back into, well, this is probably the most dominant pairing you'll find anywhere in IMSA competition, the S-Class division, where you find the Hondas. And the Hondas are just awesome, especially Cunningham's.
Yeah, they've won every race so far this year. They've been on the pole in every race just about with that car. I believe that this race is the first race they actually weren't the fastest qualifier so far this year. But they have dominated the class, just done a superb job of driving and car preparation.
Look at how much speed they carried into that corner there, turn number 1, Elliott. They sucked right past the RX-7, which should have been a lot quicker. Now, the Miata, that doesn't surprise me to see them go by him. But that RX-7, boy, that's a lot of speed.
Yeah, you would have thought that the RX-7, which has such high-performance pieces on it compared to the Honda, those guys are just doing a super job.
And you can see them locking up that right rear as well as they were using the brakes going through this tight infield section. This is actually the Prelude VTEC, which is the top-of-the-line Prelude, so it's got the latest and trickiest things that you can find on a street-legal Honda these days. And that's a pretty good car. The way these guys are drafting, I think some of the NASCAR boys would even appreciate this.
I think they're pulling away from everybody else at the time, too. And it is interesting how the front-wheel drive cars do lock up rear wheels when they get on the brakes, because that wheel is just hanging in the air there quite often.
You can see how the draft worked as the one car was a couple of car lengths ahead as they came out onto the speedway, and that gap closed up rapidly. Oh, and we're going to lock them up and lose it this time.
Oh, my. Yeah, that didn't work too well. Peter Cunningham just went straight off the outside there, got a little bit locked up, got it sideways with no traction in the back, and flew off into the dirt. I'm sure that's not what PD wanted at this time.
No.
Yeah, off there, got the wheels on the outside, not enough track for him.
Good news was he had lots of runoff room there. I think the first thing you hit when you slide off here at Texas World is Houston.
Yes,
So,
but it's good there's no guardrail there, that's
right.
for sure. Oh, we got a good race for the lead now with Peter Farrell and Boris Said.
Now let's get back to what we were talking about here just before we went and watched the battle with the Hondas. The great thing about the GS class is this is really a battle for the top-of-the-line sports cars slash muscle cars in this division. Up the 07, the Oldsmobile Achieva, done for the day. Pat Patterson, one of our buddies here on Prime Network, television cohort, having a rough day. Can't wait for old Pat to get back to Charlotte so we can get him about this one, huh?
Yep. Yeah, it's awful early for Pat to be pulling out, but it sure doesn't look good for the car.
I'm going to finish the story up before this day is over. I got 6 hours to get it in. I'm going to get it in. The great thing about this class, you got the best of those top-of-the-line sports cars battling it out here. And for those of us in the grandstands that like to own these particular types of cars, you can really cheer for your favorite. And if you read any of the current magazines out there about this type of car, the Ford Mustang is not supposed to be the highest horsepower out of this group. The Chevrolet Camaro, the Firebird, the RX-7, and so forth are all supposed to dominate. But where is Boris Said getting all this speed?
He sure is getting some, though, and he's sitting on the Farrell, which that Mazda is an excellent race car. Boris is catching him under braking a little here, which is also shouldn't happen. But Boris has done such a good job driving his other car in the Trans Am this year. I think that Boris has really progressed. He's been a good driver, but I think the seat time and a good car this year has helped him a lot. And here he goes on a move inside, under brakes on the Mazda. Incredible. And
that was strictly a great driving move there. So you're exactly right, Elliot. I have to agree with you. I think Boris really has matured as a driver this year, and it is showing here today. That's a great sign for him.
These guys have got to enjoy this too. You know, this is great racing. You don't race as hard as you would in a sprint race, but these guys are racing really hard for this front position. I think it's great. And the other thing we should point out is it's not like Boris Said is just passing a bunch of wannabe race car drivers out there. He's gotten around Joe Varney, and Boris has also passed Peter Farrell. These are the best street stock racers in the business. So Boris Said really making a name for himself here this afternoon. Yeah, he's going good. I hope he can keep it up today because it'd be good to see him have a good finish here. And the Mustangs have struggled at the beginning of the year because they had this brand new car out, but now they're doing very well here. Onto the brakes as we drop back down off of the banking. It looks like Boris is staying up on the banking as long as he can and getting a nice run down the hill. You can ask Richard Petty about that. It used to be an old trick at Daytona. It was always good for a couple of extra miles an hour. It seems to be working for Boris Said here as well today. Stay with us. We got more racing with Boris Said and Peter Farrell when we return. Accord EX of Chris Scavanis and Mike Galati is in the pits. Mike's behind the wheel right now. They're checking that VTEC motor. Now, they changed an engine in this car last night. They were there till 3 in the morning getting this car ready to go racing here today. So with the length of this event, if they can get the problems sorted out quickly, they can get Mike back in the race here, get this thing back underway and hopefully towards the front of the pack. And here we're watching the lead race again with Boris, who's up out in front now. But Peter's not letting him get too far away, is he? No, Peter, you know, he went by Peter and you thought that Boris was just going to drive off, but it sure hasn't happened. Peter's giving him a heck of a race here, trying to get back by Boris now. Now, Boris passed him earlier under brakes. You would think that this isn't going to work. And it doesn't. Boris must have some really excellent brakes in that car because he's using them very hard and seems to be keep using them. Uh-oh, there we go. That's not the right way through the corner. The Dodge Neon of Steve Cook off into the dust. Not good. It's not the fast way around that corner. I think if you stay on the pavement, it's better. And obviously, that's a tricky part for a lot of drivers. That's the second car we've seen go off there, and they might cause a couple other problems between the RX7 and the BMW there. It's getting close. It's not a wide track back here, so if you come back on, it makes it tough for the guys who are already going two abreast. Looks like he didn't hurt anything, though. Back up front, our lead duo right in the middle of the S-turns there as they work their way onto the backstretch for a second. Up into turns 3 and 4, the high-speed oval portion of the super speedway here at Texas World Speedway. This is a racetrack that had seen quite a bit of competition over the years and then went to the weeds before it was bought out by the Ishin Corporation in Japan, refurbished, and then into the weeds of the legal battle. Now running again, first time a big race has been here. IMSA, as far as I know, it's the first time they had the IMSA race that I can remember. But, boy, the racing is turning out to be pretty good here. Boy, look at the difference in those lines. Boy, everybody dirt tracking through there one way or the other. I like that. I think the tires are starting to go off a little. But, you know, those Toyo tires have been an excellent. Oh, my God. We're going to lose another one. Yeah, but he got off okay and didn't get hit by anybody. Well, and the good news here, even though the Chris Scavanis went off in the dirt, that's the same car that he shares with Mike Galati. So we know that they're back out and running now. That was a battle in the C class. Back up front with the leaders there as they lap through one of those Dodge Neons again. Yeah, that gave a little separation for Boris there. But I was saying the Toyo tires, in talking to the competitors, it's an excellent tire and hasn't been going away much and been very quick on the racetrack. And it's interesting to see him this early in the race dirt tracking him because in this kind of heat you would think that, man, the thing was with street tires that when you go out and use them, they were never made for this kind of running, with this kind of horsepower, with a car that handles as well as these cars run. And so when they get out here, they're putting the tire much harder use than it was ever designed for originally, but it still stands up. Somebody off into the dirt there. We've talked about the 4 different divisions. There's the Grand Sports division. Here's the C class where Tony Kester is leading. Chuck Hemmingson, his teammate, right behind him. The C class is a compact class. There's a touring drivers class, which is for T
division cars. There's the S class, which is the sports class, and of course GS for the Grand Sports. That is the biggest division. Look at the left rear tire coming up into the ground as those old Achievas corner through turns 1 and 2 of the infield.
Well, that'll save some rubber anyway. But the front-wheel drive cars do that a lot. They do lift that wheel. It's the way to make that front end stick and get the power to the ground is let the weight transfer from the back some, and so they are a little bit light in the back more than you'd normally have on a rear-wheel drive car.
Have you ever, I know you've done some of this form of racing in the past, have you ever pitted and rotated your tires instead of changing them, Elliot?
No, I haven't done that, Ralph.
Could be a cost-saving measure if you're a local racer out there who's looking to get into IMSA racing. You got a tire bill you can't handle? Hey, just rotate them. Don't bother changing them. Stay with us. We'll be back for more, including a proper grid sheet when we come back. Jones has brought the number 30 Pontiac Firebird into the pits. The crew working on the right front. This is not a team that's just racing for win here today. They're racing to win a big race against MS.
MS is what is really our sponsor. We have it arranged where the sponsors, the Fortune 500 companies that backing the team, are essentially giving a donation to MS vis-a-vis the racing and IMSA's street stock endurance cars at BP Racing. Those cars, after the initial startup cost and the operational fees, we then take the residual funding and give that outward gifts, either in financial gifts or in terms of equipment, to the various MS chapters and national along the circuit. When these clients at these agencies see these tape, they feel very good, and again, it's a good promotional for the races coming up. There's hundreds of thousands of people, 310,000 that have MS or afflicted, and when they see that, this is very special.
Well, we're back to the racing action here at Texas World Speedway. You're watching it all on Prime as we increase our coverage of motorsports here on Prime Network. You're looking at Doug Goad battling it out for third place, and the number 8 is racing against Joe Vardy. That black number 18 up on the high side. These cars are actually teammate cars and very well prepared together, and looks like they're having a heck of a race. They had a heck of a finish at Sebring with these two cars. Well, Joe Varney sits second in the points coming into this event. And he and his partner, Andy Pilgrim. Now, Andy has sat there, and these guys have come out this year, and they've missed a pole one time in the 5 races they've had this year. And they've had this car just flying, had some very good finishes, and I think they both do an excellent job of driving. Andy Pilgrim seems to be a very talented person, drives a lot of different cars, does well, as does Joe Vardy. So you've got 2 excellent people in the same car here, and again, we're looking at the pass again around the outside, which is what the banking allows you to do. Carry speed around the outside, makes for really good racing. Goat comes into this event tied for third with Kat Teasdale. The winner at Watkins Glen is Catherine Teasdale. John Green into the pits now in one of the touring class cars. Yeah, John Green is the points leader in the class, and they run very well. Terry Earwood usually drives with John, and looks like they're having a problem today, though. Up on the left front, could be a suspension problem, maybe a brake problem. Hard to tell. Yeah, it's hard to tell what we were seeing there. But as much as we're seeing guys locking it up, boy, it could be either of the above. Well, it's going to be hard on brakes on a track like this. Whoa, there's a move up in front of that Mazda there. 3 abreast coming down here. It looks like we got the Hondas up running together again. Peter is, guys, out front again. Incredible. But there's just seeing those teammates' cars sitting running together. I guess Peter recovered pretty well from that little off course he did earlier. Chris Wilson sitting right behind him, and they're working together as a team, it looks like. Peter Cunningham tied for the points lead in the sports division class with Forrest Grandland coming into today's round. Yeah, they've looked pretty unbeatable this year since they've won every race they've gone to so far. So that's pretty good consistency, isn't it? Absolutely, and they've been right up there sharing the pole wins amongst them. Forrest Grandland having 2 poles in the first 2 events, and Peter Cunningham winning the last 2 coming into Texas. Well, the cars are, Petey says it's just an excellent prepared car. It runs well all the time, and it's just a matter of going out there and not making too many mistakes, as like we saw him do before, which he was lucky that there was no wall for. But
Petey is an excellent driver. Been around the showroom stock for a long time. Runs Honda in a couple of different series. Wins in all of them. He's a very consistent driver that seems to run up front all the time. I don't know why he hasn't got out of this, you know, moved up, because he is a very talented racer, and you'd think he'd get to something else, but he does a super job here.
Well, the season is about half over after today's event. This is round number 5 on the tour. They'll move on to Phoenix, New Orleans, and a doubleheader at Sebring. Again, the third time we'll set foot at Sebring. They have 3 races there. Paul Dubinsky is currently running back in 8th position in the Grand Sports class, and he's battling with Ron Kerr right behind him.
A lot of good battles. It's interesting how they've broken off into pairs. I don't know what that means. But
well, I would think a lot of that has to do that you probably want to find yourself a drafting partner.
Yep.
And if you can run together and stay near the front as you wind your way through this event, you set yourself up maybe to make a bid for the win at the end. Early on in the middle portions of this race, I think you have to work together with another team out on the racetrack to set yourself up to actually race for the win later on.
It's probably true. You know, the draft here does make a big difference in how you can go. And actually, the fact that second car on the infield can drop back a bit, make it up, and actually save the car and run the same lap times, if which he doesn't seem to be doing as much here, but it can be done where you can save your car and still get a draft on the banking. And
we might see some of these guys flip-flopping around too as well. You might see that the Ford actually runs better with the Pontiac in front as opposed to the Ford being in front. So they're going to experiment a little bit. We're going to experiment a little bit here in the booth too. We'll be back. Texas and Texas World Speedway, and it's great to see race cars in anger once again here at this fine facility. So you're watching the battle in the S class for the sports division cars. A Honda and a Beamer going at it here at TWS.
And in the great spot too. You can see how hard the braking is here. But you know, you also look, Ralph, there's no straight section in that braking area. You're braking the whole time you're braking, you're turning. And so that trail braking, you've done it. It's interesting. The back end wants to come around on you while you're doing it. It loosens up the car. Hard on tires, hard on brakes.
Well, you have a lot of confidence in my driving abilities, Elliot, if you're assuming I've trail braked in my days. I appreciate the thought, Elliot, and I'm sure I've done it. Probably didn't even know I was doing it, and I'm sure I didn't do it as well as these guys are doing it today. But I am having a lot of fun watching them slide these heavy cars around on these Toyo tires like this, and watching them take the pounding and the abuse, but continuing to run so well. The fact the lightest car out here is going to be the Mazda Miata, which is still over 2,000 pounds. And these guys are really throwing these machines around on a very hot, humid day.
Boy, they certainly are. I mean, they're throwing around. And there's some of those closing rates. There's 3 classes of cars right now you see, and they're coming up with the Mustang come up around the outside. They're running down on the apron now. That's incredible. I would have thought you'd want to run on the banking.
A lot of different lines. I agree with you. I'd have been all the way up there in that upper lane and just run that car right down off the top. Look at that. Everybody trying to funnel down into turn number 1, and another car off in the dirt. Watch the car slide now.
And look how the little cars, you had the 2 Mustangs there of the Hacker team coming up, and the Honda and the BMW are running with them, or maybe even pulling them in the infield where the little cars are so nimble. And then when they get up on the bank, the Mustang will go again. Abbott, looks like the Hackers are coming up and catching just a little bit in the infield now. But there's not much difference in the infield between classes.
No, there really isn't. And this is a racetrack that's great for the balance of the field. Watch this between the 12 and the 26. Little contact there, and over goes the Mustang.
Little contact? He came over on him, and there was somebody there. I don't think he saw him at all, and it just turned him around.
Well, Hardy Hussacker is in the pits, having problems with that machine.
It looks like they're working on the driver. Maybe they're changing drivers here and getting a seatbelt done up. A lot of these drivers changes get tough, but they're working on something in the cockpit of the car. Now it looks like he's pounding on something.
Back up front with our overall leader, Peter Farrell. Back out in front now over Boris Said, who has slipped back to 2nd place. He's right there with him, though.
They're still having a good race, still sliding the cars around. Amazing the torture the tires get and the cars get, and they still run so strong. But Peter must have just sat back a little bit and decided it was time to go for the lead again.
Remember, it's over 90 degrees here and some 60% humidity. even though we don't have much more than a 20% chance of rain, as you look at the battle for third in the Grand Sport class, there's still a tremendous amount of humidity in the air, and it's taking its toll on these drivers. You know, after they've been flogging these big, heavy cars around this racetrack, there's going to be some tired guys in there. Yes, all these cars have power steering, but nobody's utilizing the air conditioner.
No, it doesn't work. You have to have the window down. That's the only air conditioning you get in these. It looks like Goad has got back by Joe Vardy again. They're having a heck of a race by themselves, and as we noticed, not very far behind the leaders. They're still in striking distance. But that may be their plan, too, is just sit there. We've seen it happen earlier in the year where they're sit back and just use the car very cautiously in the beginning and then use it a little harder late in the race. Boy, there's Boris making an outside move on Farrell.
And I like that line. I like that when you go very high up that front straightaway and then let that car run down into the turn. And Boris might have pulled that pass off had that slower car not gotten in the way.
It's true. That other Mazda was just in the way just enough that Boris couldn't carry his speed down in there. But they're having a heck of a race. I'll bet those guys are having some fun. They may be hot, but it's still a good time when you're having a race like that, especially when it's for first.
And when you're involved in the battle as much as these two are, you've probably forgotten about the heat at this point right now anyway.
I don't know. I've been out there before, Robin. I don't think you forget about the heat. It's running down all over your face. I mean, it's going to be a hot day out there, and these guys are working hard. There's not a lot of ventilation in these cars. You try and get as much as you can, but on a day like today, it's still going to be hot. Fortunately, they've got this banking where you can rest, and the air is going to circulate at a pretty good speed at that time. But then you have to get back in that infield and work again.
What's the hottest you've ever been in a race car?
Well, I think the hottest was at a Detroit Grand Prix, which has got no straightaways almost at all. Oh, we got Gene Harrington in the pits here getting some work done.
Oh, and Peter Farrell's in.
Oh, yeah, Peter Farrell looks like he's getting out of the car so he can catch that airplane out of the state and get someone else in his car. He's running really well. I bet he hates to get out of the car now.
Peter's going straight to Laguna Seca out of Monterey, California, where there's another IMSA event, part of the IndyCar weekend out there. The IMSA supercars are going to be running over there. And Peter is scheduled to be there. It looks like they're being assessed a time penalty as well. We're hearing that maybe that's for too many men over the wall. Well, a busy weekend for Peter Farrell, and he's going to head now to Laguna.
I came in for fuel. You know, we ran out of fuel. The Mazda doesn't have the fuel range of the Mustang with a big fuel cell, so you know that's all she's got. So we're going to be probably doing a couple more stops, or maybe one more stop than the other teams. But the Mazda RX7 Turbo was running fantastic, as you see. Boris Said and I had a fantastic battle for the lead. Really enjoyed the drive. Unfortunately, I have to leave the track now. I'm off to California to run the IMSA Supercar race this afternoon. So I've got a very busy schedule today.
Let's take a look at the top five of the Grand Sports class right now. Said, Goad, Vardy, Hayner, Bo Lemler chasing Boris down. Stay with us. We're coming back for more from Texas. Highlights from the first four races. This is Sebring, the opening round of the year. And you can see all the windshield wipers working, and that's not smoke, that's water from the rain on the racetrack.
And once again, we still see the Mazda out front, but it was an exciting race at the first race because they had all different kind of weather. You came down into these tight corners here, slick road. We had a lot of folks going off there, as you can see, hitting each other, taking the dirt.
This was all on the opening lap of the race, and once they bottled up like that, boy, it got real tricky for everybody behind the leaders. Some of the top cars were stranded out there in the mud and the muck for quite a while. Doug Goad took over the lead early on and looked to be one of the strongest cars as Peter Farrell and some of the others gave chase from behind.
But the weather was going to change, and it was going to make everything different. And here goes Joe Vardy passing right now the Mazda Peter Farrell. But the race conditions changed as the race went on. And here's Joe Vardy up ahead of Goad now. Did a lot of swapping of the leads at Sebring.
As they moved into the nighttime portion of the racetrack, the rain got so heavy that they brought the pace car out. Look at Vardy as the car aquaplanes on the surface here. Remember, these are street legal tires, so they do have a groove in them. But it really got crazy. They threw the green back out as they got near the end of the race, and boy, was the finish of this one wild. I don't care what kind of racing you like. This is the last turn on the last lap. Vardy, Goad, and Farrell as they came to the checkered, Peter Farrell was able to hold on the two fire-breathing Pontiac Firebirds to get the win in round number 1.
Yeah, but I think the teammates should have stayed apart there. Maybe they could have gotten Peter Farrell, but it didn't work out that way, and Peter had a great race under awful conditions.
Peter Cunningham was the winner of the S-Class for the smaller sports division cars. Beginning of a great season for them.
And he led overall for a while in this race.
He sure did, and we talked a lot about that because of the ability of those front-wheel drive cars on the wet surface. The series then moved on to beautiful Road Atlanta, just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. Green flag fell there in much nicer conditions, but the action just as fast and furious. Some of the guys still having trouble negotiating the track, even in dry conditions.
But we still have the Peter Farrell car running up front with Joe Vardy right behind him. Same people we've had everywhere else, running very good and excellent racing. These guys race so hard at Road Atlanta, just like we've seen it. Here's Joe Vardy making man, that is a heck of a move. That is a hard corner to make a pass that he's trying to make on Peter Farrell right here between turns 6 and 7.
He got to the inside, made the change for the lead, and then barnstormed down the very long backstretch here at Road Atlanta. Now, this car, the Heinrich car, one of the best in positions here at IMSA Racing, scored no points. Then this unfortunate and horrendous looking crash for Peter Farrell. He lost the brakes going under the bridge in turn 11, went right into the tire wall, and barrel rolled down the hill. Peter was able to climb out of the car, and as you know, was able to return to racing with us soon. Checkered flag came out. Once Farrell had crashed, Joe Vardy was able to take the win. Guess who won in sports division? You got it, Peter Cunningham. His little Hondas began their march towards the championship early on. Chris Scavenus, they've had some problems at Texas World, but at Road Atlanta, they were a winner. Well, the racing continues back at Texas World. Boris Said is still the leader. Goat, Vardy, Hayner, and Lemler still giving chase. When we come back, we'll take a look at the other two races from the early point of the season, Watkins Glen and Sears Point. Stay with us.
This isn't going to work. You got too many people going down to the corner. Turn 1 is really funnels down, as we've seen in all the races we've seen at Watkins Glen. It comes down there, and you can go 2 abreast through there, but it's very difficult. Coming up through the S's, very fast thing where you end up going 1 at a time by the time you get there. Here's Stu Hayner, who was running up front at the Watkins Glen race. As you can see, this coming up through the S's, great section.
Craig Conway, who drives with Bo Lemler, the 77 car. There you saw Farrell's car. One of the BMWs that's so popular on this tour, the Genesis Racing crew, using a hoseless air gun. This is a device that comes out of South Carolina, out of Greenville, South Carolina, where these guys are based out of. This has also been tried on the Busch Grand National Tour. NASCAR said, no, thank you, boys, don't use that. But in IMSA Racing right now, it's okay. Nick Ham and the guys are taking advantage of it and utilizing it.
And Nick Ham getting out of the car there. They've had some ups and downs in the season, but that BMW has run pretty well in some of the places they've been.
This is how the racing was back up front. There's Farrell's car. And now you see the number 35 of John Heinrich making a pit stop and a driver change. Remember, they had problems with this car at Road Atlanta with this team.
And the Goad Teasdale car coming through here with Kat Teasdale running an excellent race here at Watkins Glen.
Well, the problems for Heinrich and them helped put Catherine Teasdale into a position where she could become the first woman in IMSA racing history to win overall in an IMSA race. Now, Patty Moise had won in IMSA racing in the American Challenge Tour, but this was a win where there were multiple classes on the track at the same time. Catherine not only won her class, but claimed the overall win for a piece of IMSA history. Peter Cunningham, guess where he finished?
Yeah, it's just hard to beat Peter. Those guys are just, Forrest and Peter just doing an excellent job. And then Gary Newman winning the T class, the touring class. Another excellent race for him.
So another great weekend of IMSA racing was put in the books at Watkins Glen. But just because the racing was done didn't mean the celebration was done. It was time to celebrate in Victory Lane as Doug Goad and Catherine Teasdale got together in Victory Lane to celebrate a historic day.
It took a great job by the co-driver, Kat. She gave me an absolutely perfect race car. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. The guys prepped it perfectly. Dan and the crew had this thing dialed in from the start. We lost our handle yesterday during qualifying. I think Dan must have changed every part of this car last night because it handled a hell of a lot better today than it did yesterday.
So Catherine Teasdale and Doug Goad write themselves into the IMSA record, helping Kat Teasdale become the first woman to win overall in IMSA competition. Well, the crews packed up the transporters and headed as far west as the IMSA Tour goes to Sears Point in Sonoma, California.
And Sears Point is a favorite of a lot of the drivers because of the fact that Sears Point is a driver's course. You work yourself to death on this place because there's uphills, downhills, rights, lefts coming up all the time. And you have to go hard the whole time you're out there. On a hot day like today, it's going to be a lot of work. And you see the leader, Andy Pilgrim, going around. And Andy ran 2 races on this weekend, and it was about 95 degrees. And here's the sports class leader, Peter Cunningham again.
And in the touring class division, it was car number 38 of John Green, one of the Hondas, who was the dominant car of the day. Checkered flag fell to Andy Pilgrim for the win.
It was a hot one, no doubt. The yellows really helped let the engine cool off, let me cool off. I don't know if we've ever run these types of the new Pontiacs in this kind of heat, but they did extremely well. Got to thank Joe Vardy for giving me a great car again, as usual. And it was a good race. I had no radio, so I had no clue what was going on. So it was just like, when they kept picking me up as the leader, it was like, okay, I'm still doing okay. And then the Mustang, I assumed, was second place. I didn't know if he was or not. They're going to tell me later, I guess. It's a good run. They'll probably never give me a radio again.
So a big win for Andy Pilgrim, and with 4 races in the books, the tour was getting set to move east again as they would head to Texas World Speedway. So the champagne corks flew outside in the wine country as Andy Pilgrim and the rest celebrated a win at Sears Point International Raceway.
It's a great win for them, and it was a hot day, and it's a very good finish also for the Hacker car to be able to finish up there with the Mustang. They've struggled this year.
Well, we're not done racing at Texas World Speedway. When we come back, we'll have the finish of round number 5 right here on Prime. Speedway, Ralph Shaheen and Elliott Forbes Robinson with you. There are the current standings as we are into the final few minutes of racing here at TWS. This 6-hour event is winding down. Doug Goad trying to get a last dash of fuel to get him home to the checkered flag, and he's got a problem coming down off the jack stand.
Doesn't look good. I hope he didn't hurt anything when he ran over that thing, because it could damage something underneath, but it looks like it's okay, and he's on his way. Hate to have to stop that late in the race with 5 minutes to go for a gas. You just hope it makes the whole distance.
So Doug Goad back into the infield section of the racetrack, and this one is winding down rapidly. The John Heinrichs Stu Hainer car is the current overall leader in the Grand Sport division. And that's good to see, because this is a pairing with Heinrichs behind the wheel right now that had a lot of problems. We saw it in the road at Atlanta where they didn't score any points at all. Hainer himself sits 9th in the points, so if the crew can get this win, it'll really help move them up into the standings.
Yeah, it really hurts when you don't have a finish in one of these cars because the cars run so well, so close, points are so tight that you really need to finish every race, and these cars don't have very many DNFs.
So Heinrichs working through the infield section right now. Things looking pretty good for this crew. If the car holds together, they'll be able to pick up the Grand Sport win here today at Texas World.
Bo Lemler's having a good run today too, because they've had some troubles in earlier races. Been close, but just haven't had those good finishes, and it's nice to see him up there again in the Mazda for the Peter Farrell racing team.
One of the most jovial people you'll meet in the pit area. Bo Lemler just has a great time, lives over in San Diego, so he'll have a short flight home tonight and a big celebration when he gets back to the West Coast. Chris Scavenus, they had problems early on, him and Mike Gelati, but now it looks like they're in contention to win this thing.
Yeah, there's been a lot of problems in the race with the heat. The cars have had a lot of attrition, and it's good to see him get back up again. But that's why it doesn't pay you. If you don't give up and you keep trying hard, man, you can still get there in a 6-hour race.
Gelati has promised to cook the crew a pasta dinner if they can get a win here today. So, you know, they're going to be pushing hard to get that. And Ron Emick, of famous go-kart fame, sits back in 4th place in class.
These guys are running awful close to each other and pushing each other pretty hard here for this late in the race. You'd think after this many hours in this kind of heat, you'd be just relaxing and just hoping the checker falls.
Bit of a ripple to the hood of the second Honda there. Dodge Neon about to get lapped on the outside.
The Oldsmobile coming around the outside, running very well still. It's been a heck of a battle between the Oldsmobiles and the Hondas this year. The Hondas seem to have been coming out on top, but the Oldsmobiles have been running very strong. They've been in the race, but just not able to beat the Hondas so far.
Remember, we have done almost 6 hours of racing, and to see the competition as close as it is with Bill Pate, the leader in the touring class, to see the battles on the racetrack this close is a real tip to the IMSA officials for setting up the rules as well as they have with these particular divisions. Look at that left rear wheel was just still for a good 4 seconds.
Next up here is Peter Cunningham again, leading once more.
Imagine that.
Grandland, yeah, they've had an excellent year, and they're leading by a ton this time, but it just shows you what good preparation and some excellent driving will do.
The checkered flag about to fall as John Heinrichs brings the Pontiac Firebird, the black and gold machine, off for the 4th turn here, the super speedway portion of the racetrack. And the victory at Texas World Speedway after 6 hours of racing is theirs. There's Stu Hainer in the mobile uniform with the sunglasses on. They're winners at Texas. This is over the last 30 years than anyone else. Genuine Chevrolet. Well, here are the final standings overall. You can see the top 5 positions all went to the Grand Sport Division cars, and the overall victory went to the number 32 Pontiac of drivers Stu Hainer and John Heinrichs. Heinrichs actually the driver behind the wheel when they took the checkered flag, and the points that they'll pick up here today will make a big difference and help them make up that huge deficit they had after Road Atlanta, where they picked up 0 points.
It's a good finish for them because they have had some trouble this year, and they are excellent drivers. It's good to see them up in front.
Peter Cunningham puts one of the S-Class cars inside the top 10. Another win for him in the Honda. As you look back through the back half of the top 15 here, let's go to Victory Lane and our winner.
It was about time. It's been over a year since we had our win. We had some close ones this year, and we led right toward the end, and then we had a problem. But this year we made it all the way through, and can't say enough for my co-driver John, and I'm really happy.
Well, it was pretty warm, but it wasn't as bad as Sears Point when we drove there in July or whenever that was. It was worse then, so it was bad here, but not that bad.
Well, let's break down the 4 different classes for you. In the S class for the sports division, it was Peter Cunningham, Collins, Waddell, Wilson, and Davis, your top 5 there. Take a look at the other 2 divisions as well. In the touring car class, Bill Pate was able to hold off Terry Earwood at the finish. Joe Nonamaker, Jason Potter, and Gary Newman rounded out the top 5. And in the compact division, Chris Scavenus and Gelati were able to get their car back together and take home the victory in that division as well. Point standings after 5 races for the Grand Sports division shows Andy Pilgrim on top. The slim lead over Joe Vardy with a bunch of racing yet to go in the 1995 season. Top 5 in the S-Class, it's a battle of teammates in red Hondas. Forrest Crandland and Peter Cunningham are going to have to decide who gets the driver's title. In the touring division, John Green with a 12-point lead over Mark Hine, and Terry Earwood still in competition, and Jason Potter within striking distance. And finally in the C division, boy, what a tough battle it's going to be between Scavenus and Gelati there. A couple of teammates deciding who will have the last turn at the wheel when we wrap the season up at Sebring. Good day of racing here.
Oh, a great day of racing, and I think that on a day like today when it's hot and 6 hours, it's the good preparation, it's the guys who save their equipment for the end. They come up there with no problems, and I think that if the Heinrichs and Stu Hainer, who have been such excellent drivers over the years, have won a lot of these races and then come back and win this one, it's great.
Well, the next stop on the tour is Phoenix, Arizona. We'll be at PIR, Phoenix International Raceway, for round number 6 of the IMSA Street Stock Tour in 1995. Well, for my buddy Elliot Forbes Robinson, I'm Ralph Shaheen. Thanks for joining us here on the Chevy Motorsports Hour on Prime. So long.